Roses is one of the biggest disappointments to ever come out of the Roblox horror genre, and with the amount of praise that it got back in the day, I think that it's about time we decided to take a look back on this massive turd and witness just how bad that it was for real. Alright, so in late 2016, this guy named Michaelvanderfin decided to make another game. Until this point, he was credited with making Scary Maze, an unfinished game. Please keep this detail in mind. Roses was a game where you found yourself trying to escape an abandoned asylum that had been overrun by the inmates. So it was basically Outlast, but without the good parts. There was a light amount of detail on Roses, but other than that, it wasn't anything beyond a cool detail that they threw in every now and then. The game called itself a beta, but don't be fooled because this game was literally the farthest thing from finished that you can possibly imagine. It was more of a demo or a playable teaser for something much bigger. Calling this game a beta was basically if you called Yandere Simulator a beta. I remember 12-year-old me vigorously pulling the game every time it got an update because I thought that he'd add a new level or a new chapter or something. But no, he didn't. Throughout the game's original lifecycle, it got a shit ton of updates, but none of them really seemed to advance the game very much. He'd add a new jump scare, or he'd remove an old jump scare, or he'd change the position of a room, but the game didn't really change that much. There was an update, however, that changed the game from multiplayer to single player, and instead of an inmate, you took the role of an amateur video maker trying to retrieve his friend Max from the haunted Newport Asylum, in which he was lost in while the two of you were trying to make a scary video. Kind of reminds me of Resident Evil 7, which was a horror game that came out around the same time, except the only difference between the two was that it wasn't a massive piece of shit. Either that or Michaelvanderfin has a fetish with making his games take place during an orange sky for some reason. Now, even though this game was incomplete and had literally no signs of ever being completed, it was nominated for a Bloxy Award, alongside Lightbulb and Silent Dark, which were two horror games that were actually creative and finished. Roses was just a game where you walked through an asylum with the occasional creepy noise, or some shitty cliche. Oh no, a little girl is asking where her teddy bear is. Oh no, scary. It would only be scary if we hadn't seen this type of shit 9,000 times before.
Over here, Mommy.
Alright, so anyways, this game ended up getting moved over to Michael's development group called Clockwork Entertainment, along with his other game, Alone. Interestingly, Michael is the lead builder here, not the lead scripter, which explains why the game looks so pretty, but beyond that it's a piece of shit. And this is noticeably apparent in the new version of the game, where they rewrote it to be a game where nothing fucking happens. In the original game, like I said before, there were noises, there were jump scares, and there were dead bodies. But in the new version, they updated it to where none of that happens anymore. It's just you walking through an abandoned building. An abandoned building that somehow still has some cuck paying the electric bill after all these years. And judging how the laptop has Windows 10 on it, we can assume that the building's lights have been running non-stop for a minimum of 18 years. How has nobody looted this place yet? The building wasn't barricaded or fenced up. There wasn't even a fucking sign that said no trespassing or anything. According to the game, there was a string of homicides that resulted in the institution being shut down, and the murderer just left a bunch of roses on people's corpses. But like I said, you don't actually see any of that anymore because they removed basically everything scary. As if this game wasn't already ripping off Outlast, they added some budget-ass wall rider that's established when you first enter the auditorium. And I ended up replaying the game twice in preparation for this video, and both times, I didn't see the ghost. There was also a mini jump scare on the second floor where the radiator starts hissing, but interestingly, that only happened on my first playthrough and it didn't happen my second time. There are only 2 instances of anything scary happening in the entire game, ever since the update. The other 2 chapters are literally the definition of padding. You just walk through the asylum. Nothing happens, no lore is established. The game is basically a showcase of Michael's building talents with nothing beyond that. Also, this game was paid access, which was not something that the original was. I literally paid money to play a game where nothing fucking happens. More shit happened in the free version than in the paid version. All I did was explore some abandoned building. I could have just drove my ass to Detroit and have gotten the same experience. Except I would have actually gotten chased by some homeless guy or something, so I would have actually felt scared. And the way that this game's pay-to-play nature was marketed was so fucking manipulative. Like, this game isn't an alpha. You are buying the full game whenever we decide to release it. But it never got finished. It's just like buying the season pass for Call of Duty, but then they just decide not to release the rest of the DLC. They also changed the cutscene in the new version of the game to not include Max, which was the friend that you're trying to rescue, by the way. I guess it just wasn't crucial to the plot to show who Max was. You just have to take the game's word for it, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, like I said, Michael hasn't exactly had the best track record when it comes to finishing games, because his other game that was moved to Clockwork Entertainment, Alone, was also never finished, despite the massive hype for it. Why? Well, in early 2019, Clockwork decided to sideline their other two projects in favor of making a Battle Royale game, because it would bring more players and revenue. Basically, they needed more money in order to complete their other games, but then they just never did. And pay attention while watching this trailer, because I think it's about time that we talked about this. Michaelvanderfin is a good builder, but by no means is he a good game designer. This trailer for a Battle Royale is purely cinematic shots of the map itself, but no actual gameplay. Same with Roses. Like, the music is building, but nothing is fucking happening. The peak of your fucking horror game is lights going out, which is something that doesn't even happen in the actual fucking game, by the way. I'm not even trying to be too judgmental here, but where did the money go? I thought 2 people were working on these games, 1 builder and 1 scripter. I would have assumed that the money would have gone to hiring new scripters or builders, but apparently not. Okay, so I just joined the Discord server to investigate, and apparently these guys were full-time Roblox developers, not like part-time, meaning that this was literally their job. And judging by how little Roblox actually pays their developers, all that Robux most likely went towards just sustaining their real-life selves. So, yeah. Once the Battle Royale game died, the entire studio appeared to die with it. They stopped posting on their Twitter, they stopped posting updates on their group, they never updated their games ever again. It would have been cool to conclude with video with an explanation on what the fuck happened, but I genuinely don't have one. They just simply took the bag and ran with it. And in the end, this is just Roblox. It's kind of hard imagining a fully fledged story game happening in Roblox, at least at that scale. Kids don't know when they're being scammed. I would know. I was one of the people that ended up buying the game passes for both Scary Maze and Roses. And I mean, Roses was literally nominated for a Bloxy in 2016 and 2017, despite being really shitty. But that's nothing surprising. I think we as a society had already agreed that the Bloxies didn't really dictate a game's quality by that point in time. In the end, many, and I mean many, Roblox developers often bite off more than they can chew. They set out with extremely bold plans to make these games that are impossible to come to fruition in the end. They're often extremely unprofitable, are made by indie studios, and are almost always carried by the hype, rather than the actual product itself. Roses was a game that could basically never be made. Not with this developer, not on this platform, and definitely not at that point in time. Michaelvanderfin is a builder first and foremost, but he's by no means a good game developer, especially if he's just willing to leave all his fans sitting in the dark after they devoted their time and money to him. I think that the kids who mindlessly gave the man their Robux have the right to be disappointed, because in their mind, they thought that this game had a ton of potential, only to be let down in the end. Basically, don't give your Robux to games that will never be finished. If a game is literally relying on donations and it doesn't get a lot of players or updates, just be safe and assume that it's going to die. Ironically, the original Scary Maze game from 2009 is the only game on Michael's profile that was ever finished. So maybe go play that, because at least the game is worth the sum of its parts or whatever. Roses are red, violets are blue, this game is bad, and you should feel bad too. Thanks for watching, everybody. My name's Breadian. I play and review Roblox games. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Love you. Bye.